Welcome back to the Olmstead Workshop. I'm Jordan Olmstead, and today we're taking a look at a Shadowbox. Shadowboxes can be very personal items. This one I am building for a good friend of mine who approached me needing something to save and display mementos of concerts that they had attended with a loved one. This is essentially going to be a cabinet with a removable back and a glass door in the front. So I began by milling down my stock for my large maple board. If you're starting with a 1x4 or 1x3 material, it would save a considerable amount of time. Moving over to the table saw, I made 2 passes on each board, cutting a 1/2-inch rabbet that's going to house the back plate. After cutting all the rabbets, I set my blade angle to 45 degrees so I could cut miters for all of the rails. Using a band clamp, I ensured to use plenty of glue since this was going to be an end grain to end grain joint. There's a number of ways to reinforce a mitered corner, including using decorative splines, but since this had a 1/2-inch rabbet that a 1/2-inch piece of plywood was going to be screwed into the back of, I wasn't too worried about that joint coming apart. After checking the back panel fit, I used a countersink bit to pre-drill all my holes. With the back panel fit, I used that as a template for my foam core board, which is going to act as the interior of my Shadowbox. Laying out a maroon felt, I laid my foam core into the middle of it and left plenty of overlap to be able to fold over and glue onto the back. A rotary cutter would have made this much easier, but I only had scissors on hand. Using some 3N Super 77 spray adhesive, I sprayed the edges and then fold and pulled the felt up over the edges of the foam core. If you use this method to apply your felt, be sure to leave plenty of time for that spray to get tacky, as I was a little anxious to get started and it was a wet, sticky mess. I did want this piece to be serviceable or replaceable in the future, so I used 3M mounting tape to adhere it to my back board. With the board just press fit into the frame, I used that as a template to be able to drop the felted piece down square right into the middle. The 3M mounting tape I used is foam based, so I made sure to apply even pressure and make sure all the strips were compressed to get a nice strong adhesion. Carefully lifting the frame off, I then placed a 20-pound weight on top of the felt to make sure it adhered and could stay overnight. With the back half of the box sorted, it was time to move over to the front door. Using a pair of Whiteside 5990 shaker door bits, I cut all my rails and stiles into my front panel. During this process, it's important to use a backer board as not to split our finished pieces. With all the rails and stiles cut, it was time to finally stand it up and see how that door looked. I traced the hinges onto the sides and used my Incred Tiny T and a marking knife to lay out my lines. I've been trying to utilize more traditional woodworking tools, so one of these I paired out with a chisel. As you can see, this can be a very time-consuming process. A much faster way to do this would be to use a trim router with either a upcut bit or what I used was a template bit, and then I just used a chisel to clean up the corners. Then using a self-centering drill bit, I pre-drilled both the door and the case sides. Using tape to hold one of the rails in place, I put glue on the other. This way I could have one removable side to slide my glass piece in later. Since I used a cabinetry router bit, I did need to get a 1/4 inch piece of glass, but it does give it a very nice substantial weight to the door. Now that I was about ready for finishing, I used one of my favorite tricks, using Speedball India ink. As a dye, this is excellent as its alcohol base absorbs and dries quickly and has very easy cleanup. As you can see, I wasn't too concerned with getting on the glass, because a paper towel and a little Windex cleaned it right back up. What's nice about the India ink is it gives you a very black color without really obscuring the grain like you might see in other stains. A gloss finish was requested, so I used several coats of Krylon spray-on lacquer in a gloss finish. For the front door, I did mask off the glass with painter's tape and brown paper. That way I kept any overspray of the lacquer off the glass. Once that had ample time to dry, it was time to reinstall those hinges and finally test out how well this door works. It fit really well and I was very happy with the gloss finish. However, the door was rather heavy with that 1/4 inch piece of glass, so I did end up installing a magnetic catch on the inside just to make sure that it stayed closed when it was mounted to the wall. Flipping it over, it was time to permanently install the back. One trick that I always use in this is to add an extra screw to either the top or the bottom. That way it's easy to line it up again if it ever gets removed. With the back panel firmly screwed in place, I also installed a sawtooth hanger, and it was nearly complete. There was only one step that I still needed to do. With everything completed, it was time to stand it up and peel off that mask for the final reveal. I was rather proud of how this turned out, as it always feels good to make something special for someone that they'll cherish. Well, I hope everyone learned something today. Thanks for stopping by the Olmstead Workshop. Please like and subscribe for more content, and we'll see you next time.